Welcome to the TufFish Show. I am so excited to bring to you the co-authors of Hannah Bloom books. Welcome, Johanna, and welcome, Janae. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
We're really excited. This is fun.
Oh, awesome. I am so excited. And I would love for you both to start because I know you're childhood friends, but that also means you had your own path to get there before you became friends and obviously co-authors. So how'd you get into writing?
So it's always been like a passion or like dream that I would write a children's book. And then we actually wrote a book together when we were like, I don't know, maybe 9 years old. We like had one of those little like craft, like pre-bound books that you can like fill in the pages and stuff. So, and then just like in our job as teachers and going to school as learning to be educators, just like so much exposure to children's books and good ones and ones that don't really like connect with the audience or the reader. And so it was just always a passion to be able to like write my own children's book. And so it was always something where I was like, okay, if a good idea comes, then I'll know that like, I got to do this. And I just kind of like read lots of children's books and taught and like kept little ideas in my head, like would write things down in the middle of the night and kind of like, they all didn't really like seem that great in the morning. But I was playing with a student in a preschool class and kind of just like my dialogue with the student, I was like, this could kind of go somewhere. And then that night I was laying in bed and like came up with like 2 like rhymes, texted Johanna in the morning. And I was like, okay, I got this idea for a children's book and I got to bounce the ideas off of you. And she was like, okay, let me hear it because that was like my dream too. And so we kind of texted back and forth and she's like, okay, I'm picking up the vibes of the book. And she's like, hold on, I got to help my kids do this because I got an idea. And we kind of like wrote the whole book texting back and forth with each other, kind of like that day, right, Johanna?
Yeah, it was like that first, draft was just like bam, bam, bam. That first day we like kept working through it. So
Johanna, how did you get into writing then? How did it bring to you to that point?
I mean, pretty similar as Janae was saying. I had kind of the same aspirations and dreams, like even as a young kid. I remember like having authors come into school and presenting their books and like writing them afterwards saying, I want to be a kid's author too. And just like falling in love with books at a young age and like saying like, I'm going to be a children's author. And that was my goal. And then obviously as you get older, you realize like, there are certain dreams and then there are realistic things that you want to do. And so I chose teaching. And I'm really glad I chose that. But it then, like Janae was saying, like exposed me to children's literature, and that became kind of my love within teaching. And then, so we both became educators and then connected again as adults by working together at preschool. So we like co-teach together now. And so it really organically happened because we were teaching together. And then also, I mean, you and I would go to the library and like just look at so many kids' books together to like build our curriculum and whatnot. And so it just became so organic to then talk about our own kids' book idea. And so, yeah, Janae texted me one day and said, I have this idea. And I must say, like, that is like her strength all the way, because I think in my head, realistically, I was like, oh, I'll never become a children's book author like I always wanted to. That seems so daunting. That seems like so much work. She's like, no, I'm going to make it happen and I'm going to do it this way. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, it was motivating. And so it worked so well to do it together.
Yeah, it sounds like you two were able to really play off each other's strengths. And yeah, that's really cool. So to your point about writing co-authoring a book, it's one thing to come up with the idea and then to bounce it off. But you said like, okay, so first off, part of that was the texting back and forth to start to create the story. But once you had this idea kind of gelling and you could really start to see it take shape, then what was your process to find an illustrator or to come through what that should feel like? Should it be watercolor? Should it be sketches? Should it be graphic design? So talk about that process and how you guys came through that.
I guess, I mean, Janae, you can expand on this a little bit, but I think it kind of started, I'd say, almost just like through our own connections and a little bit out of necessity, because it's actually, our illustrator is related to Janae through marriage. So it was one of those things where we really were starting from scratch with nothing and knew that we couldn't put a lot of money into this project. And so we started to think about who do we know and who can we connect with organically. So that's how we started with the illustrator process. And Hannah Grace Smith is who illustrated our book, and she's incredibly talented. She's talented in a lot of different mediums, but she paints and does watercolors. And so we felt like for this particular, for this particular book, A Day to Stay Home, it has a lot of nostalgia kind of a feel. And so that watercolor seemed to be the most fitting for that. But I'd say, yeah, with working off of our strengths, like we started the ideas, like Janae was up front with the idea and like just had all these ideas flowing, and we, bounced off ideas off of each other. And then I feel like I tend to be like more conservative. My ideas just like, I can't do that, I can't do this, but like I'm more of like an editor, and like I can kind of like pare things down in my head and like, like, okay, this grammatically doesn't make sense, or like this period or comma needs to be here or whatever. But then like Janae is just like really good about just coming up with all the creative stuff. So as far as playing with each other's strengths, like I think it works really well.
Yeah. So A Day to Stay Home is actually Johanna's not giving herself enough credit. So A Day to Stay Home is actually not the book that we originally sought out to publish. That one is kind of sitting on the back burner because we had like done a lot of research for the book that we originally wrote, and even met with our illustrator and kind of pitched the idea to her, and even talked through like all of our sketches and our like vision for the book. And we were all home a lot. We were sent home for COVID from school, and like we're kind of just with our kids, and Johanna's like, all right, I got this new idea. And it goes along with like the style and the kind of like feel of the other book we wrote. And it kind of could become like a series and kind of like gel together well. And I was like, all right, we gotta switch gears. We gotta do your book, because it doesn't make sense to hold on to your book, because it's time effective to do it now with what we're going through, with the connection we can make with what everybody in the whole world is going with. And so if we want to publish your book, then we got to switch gears and do it now. So we contacted our illustrator and we were like, don't be mad at us. Can you please switch gears and like do this new book instead? And she was like, sure, I'm not doing anything. I'm at home. I just graduated college and, everything's shut down. So yeah, I got all the time. So we kind of cranked out a day to stay home in like 5 months?
It was so
Years.
fast. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, like summer to November, basically.
I love that. So you're talking about a few things here. You're talking about how you pivoted. You're talking about how one idea came and maybe it wasn't the right time yet for that story. Not that you can't release this other story, that the text story, but that at least that idea has a time, but it might not have been now. And a day to stay home showed up in another way. It came as, and just like this resonating theme throughout this is organic, that it came organically too, but it really resonated and it felt right. But it was like, if we're going to do this, it has a time, it has a season that we need to honor. So your willingness to recognize that first and foremost, and then adapt and make that change, and then recognize that the other has its place too, just maybe a later time. I love that. I think that's courageous. And I think that that is so cool because it's also honoring the flow of what's happening. And sometimes it can be very difficult to get something going and then realize, oh, I got to make a change. And is this the right thing to do? Is this the right change to make? I think it's wonderful that you did that. Did you have any doubts when you were doing that?
I would say, so like the first time I brought the idea up to Janae, I was like, okay, I have this idea for a book called A Day to Stay Home. And it's similar to the format of this other book that she had come up with. And like I said, I tend to be just like really reserved about those kind of decisions and being like, oh my gosh, like there's no way we could do it. But we would go on a lot of walks in the summer with our kids, and we'd like throw them in the stroller and walk on the path by my house. And I was like, okay, I just have to like talk this out with you. And like, it sounds so crazy and I don't know if this is like a bad idea, but Jenny was like, no, we have to switch gears. Like, you're so right. So I think it's like one of the biggest benefits of working with somebody else is like just having someone to talk through things and like bounce ideas off of each other. Because like I was saying, if it were totally up to me, it would never happen. So it like, having another person like, yes, this is a good idea, let's do it. So yeah, that was a big shift and hard for me to even like, I'd say even want to mention it to you, because I was like, oh no, we can't do that.
So how did you feel about switching gears, Janae?
Yeah, it was easy because there's that partnership, and like we kind of talked about from the very beginning, that like this was both of our dreams and we wanted to be partners in this, and we wanted to definitely like share the like responsibilities and the goals and the passion that was there. And so when she brought the idea to me that, I kind of have this idea, but it doesn't really make sense, like time-wise to do it later. There wasn't any doubt in my mind that I wanted to support her passion too. And that it just made sense to switch gears and do this book that she came up with because of it was timely, it was important to just get it out there because it wouldn't be relevant later. And so, yeah, I think that just kind of our friendship kind of just like helps that, because we both want to see our dreams and passions come to be. And so it was like a no-brainer for us to kind of like switch gears and support this book and this idea, and then, pick up the other one later when it was more appropriate timing.
So what's it like being in, what's it like being in business with, your friend in this way? So it's not just co-authoring, it's really a business that you two have formed too. What's this like?
It's kind of funny because I feel like looking back on our friendship, even as kids and making our own book together, we almost already were playing off of each other's strengths in a lot of ways. And it's so funny looking back at our lives, like middle school and high school, when we started to get really close. It's almost like we always kind of had this like business like tendency to work together, because we would like organize things for like our friends and like try to, plan things in this like very business like manner. We're both kind of planners and like to organize and like accomplish things. And so it's kind of funny looking back on those times even and realizing maybe this was like all meant to be, because I think we even like work better when we're actually like working on something and like trying to accomplish something. I mean, we co-teach, we are like co-workers. We wrote a curriculum together and we teach together. So it's like this actually fits just kind of along in those lines, like going back to like middle school, we were like, okay, or even as 9-year-olds writing a book together, like we are going to do this. And or as we're older, we're going to like organize this party for our friends and they're going to do like, it's just kind of funny looking back, because I think maybe other friendships are better off when they're like just not doing that side of things, and that makes perfect sense. But I think, I don't know, that this almost is just the way we've always operated.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it's just like a natural extension. And I love the whole, we wrote books. We wrote this book we were 9, and I love that so much. That just makes my heart happy. It's so sweet. Oh my goodness. So when you think about like moving forward, and do you think that this book that you were initially writing, do you think that might be something that comes up next, or is there more to the series, to this potential series of A Day to Stay Home?
Yeah, so definitely like once you kind of get into that writing mode and creating mode, then the juices start getting flowing. So like as we're working on the first book, that's how organically this other idea came about. And then while we're working on A Day to Stay Home, it's just like ideas were popping in our heads of like other things that connect, or other ideas, or watching our kids. I think being home too a lot, and like just interacting with our kids so much, and kind of slowing down and not being so rushed through things really helped like spur this like creative juices kind of. And then we definitely have lots of different ideas and plans on the burners. And then time wise, now that everybody's kind of slowly getting back into like routines and busyness and stuff, it's definitely going to be a lot slower process, which we're totally fine with. That's like something we're okay with. And we recognize that everybody like life stage, and not every book is going to get out in 5 months from like the idea to like having it out there for the world to buy. And so we kind of have had to step back a little bit and slow down our process and just take our time and realize like, what's good for you, what's good for me, and then like what's good for our team without like,
It definitely is like kind of reflecting where we're at in our lives. We've learned so much from A Day to Stay Home, from self-publishing A Day to Stay Home. I feel like we can just take all that we've learned and apply it back to our first book idea, which we are slowly working on. But it's like, it really has helped us so much, because we just poured so much time, and like we researched and listened to podcasts and looked up YouTube. Like we just poured so much of our energy into that project because we had the time to, that now we can be like, okay, we're getting back into our lives and we're busy again. And so now we can take a step back and like still work on these projects and these ideas that we have, but like we have more knowledge to work with. And so that's been good to slow down a bit and use it to our advantage.
So what would be some key nuggets that you would want to share with somebody who might have yet to publish their first book?
I guess it would depend on how they want to publish, because we chose self-publishing for our avenue, and that we can get into that, I guess.
Sure.
We researched several options out there, and we still keep our ears open and our minds open to that, different companies, but we did end up choosing KDP through Amazon. And we chose them specifically for their just basically being streamlined and the accessibility for anybody really who wants to buy it. And like we've mentioned, we are busy moms. We each have 3 kids and we're teachers. And so we just knew we could not handle having too much inventory in our houses and dealing with shipping actual books out. It just was like a no-brainer for us to be like, no, we can't put that on our plates. And so Amazon prints the books on demand, and anybody can access them, and it ships anywhere that they want to send it. So that was for us it was like so much of a convenience thing. So far it has been working out really well. And obviously they're well known enough that, people can just go on and buy it. But we have already started to work a little bit with other companies for a hardcover. So, but our main thing is a paperback through KDP, and that has worked out really well. So that would be like, I guess my overall piece of advice for anybody starting out is think about like where you're at in your life and what are your goals. Are your goals to sell locally? Because then obviously Amazon is not the way to go. Are your goals to sell to anybody around the country, or like to streamline? Because then Amazon would totally be the way to go. But like, what are your goals? Where are you at with your life? What can you handle? Where do you want to take this? And think from there, because we really had to like pare down our expectations almost a little bit too. Like, just, okay, realistically, where can we go from here? And that's where we ended up. So
those are great points. Janae, would you add anything?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a lot to research and a lot to think through. And there's so many tiny little details and things to think through, like ISBNs and like, are we going to go with the free one through Amazon, or are we going to purchase our own so that later we have the opportunity to like do more things with it? And so it was just overwhelming kind of at first. And we talked to some other friends who self-published books and kind of found a community of people through social media that were kind of in the same process. And some of them had already self-published books, and some of them had yet to even write their book, but had an idea. And some of them were like at the exact same stage as us. And it was so nice to be able to like find a community of other writers and authors, specifically children's books authors, and kind of ask questions like, what's the best way to get an ISBN? Did anyone do this? What's your experience? And so that's kind of like a little bit of the reason why we chose KDP. And then like Johanna was saying, after talking to them and realizing like, this is what worked for them, and this is where their life stage is, and this is where our life stage is, and this is what is realistic for us, and how we can get our book out there now, because like we kind of mentioned, it was timely to get it out there now. And this was the way to do that. And so I guess that's kind of why we landed on what we landed on.
That's really cool. Now, one of the things I heard you both kind of allude to was really like the reach, this using social media, leveraging that. But like, just because a book gets published doesn't necessarily mean it's getting to the right people immediately. So you've done some effort to try to help bridge that gap between, hey, we've published, and getting it into your ideal, children's hands, your ideal customers' hands. So would you touch on a couple of things that might have worked really well for you?
Yeah, so like Johanna mentioned, we did listen to some podcasts before we started publishing our book, or setting out to publish our book. And one of the main takeaways, at least for me, was like, build your audience before you even have your book, and how important that is to like connect with your audience. Like, first of all, who is your audience? And second of all, how are you going to connect with them? And we kind of have, obviously, we're teachers, so that's like one way to connect with our audience is through like our students and our parents that we interact with. But then we're like, well, where do moms hang out? Where do moms our age hang out? And we're like, well, we're on Instagram. So we kind of like built this new Instagram page for Hannah Bloom Books. And we started like finding those connections and finding other moms who loved posting about books. And like, we were getting recommendations from them, and like, oh, we got to put that in our preschool curriculum. And so we kind of just were like taking them along our author journey, which was kind of intimidating, because we're like, what happens if this book tanks? And now we've like taken these people on our author journey and it doesn't like work out or whatever. But it was really encouraging to have people like cheering us on and like interested in what we were posting, and excited for our book to come out. And so that's kind of how we built that platform and connected with our audience and our readers.
I love that.
And I will piggyback a little bit off of that too. Just getting that piece of advice to build your audience, basically your clientele before the book actually comes out, was really helpful for us, even in formatting the book and formatting the style of writing and the pictures, because we really came down to the decision to gear to both adults and children, to the readers, like most likely the readers, the adults reading aloud to the kids. And so we tried really hard to make that happen in the pictures and the words. And so it really helped us think through that. And I would say even help us kind of like brand ourselves to like say, we now are only trying to gear ourselves towards children, but we are trying to gear ourselves towards the adults who are most likely reading this aloud to the kids. And so hopefully they connect through reading. And that's also a passion of ours as teachers, but also as parents. Like, we want reading to be a joint experience for the adult and the kid together, before they can even read themselves. So I'd say that hearing that piece of advice really helped us even like focus in on our branding and the way we wanted to format our books.
Oh, I love all that. You guys, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can our listeners connect with you, and where can they get the book?
Well, like we mentioned, we are on Amazon.com. You can find us pretty actively on Instagram through at Hannah Bloom Books. And then we do have a website, hannahbloombooks.com. So that's where you can find us.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you.
Thank
you. It was
you.
so fun.